What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and I'm here today to give you my tips and tricks for Kingdom Come Deliverance. Now, this is going to be slightly different. It's going to be tips and tricks, but it's more or less going to be tips and tricks for getting into the game. This game is very, very different, and I'm not yet ready to say whether it's a good or a bad game. But I'm going to give you some just basic level tips and tricks for basically what to expect as you're going into this game. So don't expect anything too radical, more or less just a guide of how you're going to be experiencing this game once you put in the disc. Okay, so there's a lot to this game. The first thing we're going to talk about is going to be the combat. Because the combat, I think, is something that people are drawn to, especially with something I was drawn to when I first watched the trailers. Combat is something that you don't need to get into. It's not something that necessarily is even made for you to do, as are a lot of things in this game early on. It's something that you can do throughout the entire game, but it's not something you necessarily have to. But when you get into the combat, it basically revolves around, there's 5 different placements for your sword, and that is where you can strike from the up direction, from the diagonal left, diagonal right, bottom diagonal left, bottom diagonal right. You can do a heavy attack, and you can do a light kind of poke jab with your sword. You can also block. So these are things, again, this isn't like a guide of how to fight. Maybe that will come in future videos later in the week once I get more used to it. The fighting is kind of unique. I do kind of like the fighting so far. It feels heavy. It feels like it has weight. It's not super responsive, and it's supposed to be that way. And again, when you first start out this game, you are not going to be a good fighter. I would recommend you stay away from every single fight possible. And that kind of leads to tip and trick number 2 is look at your surroundings and see if there's more than one way of doing them. And the game somewhat does this in the beginning with one of its quests in terms of you have to get something from an older man, and you can do it a couple different ways. You can get your friends to help you, or you can basically steal it without the guy noticing. And stealing is its own thing. Stealing is something that you can do basically all the time. You can trespass, and you can kind of go into areas you're not supposed to be in, and you can steal whatever you want. But the thing with that is you got to make sure guards do not see you. If guards see you, you get arrested. It leads to a cutscene where you're in the jail. If you get arrested early on in the game basically kills you. It kills you off. It sets your jail on fire, basically, and you get treated to the main menu screen again. So you don't want to go to jail. Jail is very bad. And so if you're stealing, or even if in the early levels you're beating somebody up, you want to make sure you're doing it away from guards, or you want to be able to smooth talk your guards. Now, there's multiple different ways you can go about doing really anything in this game, and there's different personalities that you're going to be able to explore. The game is actually pretty unique with that. You can kind of build yourself up by being more of like a dictator, kind of like scaring people with your power. You can scare them in a way by dressing up nice. Like the nicer you look, the more royalty you look, the more people respect you. You can have good speech skills in general, and you can have good fighting skills in general, which would lead to you talking. So there's actually like 4 or 5 areas like that in which you can develop and get better on. It's like any game like this, like an Elder Scrolls or like a Fallout, where you may fail these kind of dialogue choices early on, or until you get to the proper level of that specific trait. Like I said, there's always more ways than one to solve a specific problem in this game. So if you see something and you don't know how to do it, I had that situation where I tried to beat up an old man. It didn't really work. I got thrown into jail. And so I thought, okay, maybe I can steal the stuff from him. I stole most of the stuff from him, but then I ended up beating him up, but I beat him up in a different way. I beat him up kind of hidden away, and then I got whatever I wanted from him. So there's more than one way to explore this game. And a thing I want to warn you, this isn't, again, necessarily a tip and trick, but it kind of is a tip, is be prepared for this game, because this game is not a normal game. Firstly, and just brutally honestly, this game feels a lot like it's an early alpha. This game feels unfinished in a lot of parts, and that's okay. Again, I'm not ready. You'll see my full review in a couple days. I'm not ready to say it's a bad game, but it does feel not finished in certain parts. It has a lot of great concepts, but you need to be prepared for this. I don't want people going in with unrealistic expectations like maybe I did. The game has a lot of potential there, but it feels very incomplete. There's a lot of clipping. There's a lot of graphical issues. There's a lot of glitches. There's a lot of camera troubles that this game has. There is a lot of negatives in this game, and you need to be ready for that. Another thing you need to be ready for, actually two things. First thing is story heavy. Now, I actually said this in my preview, and I'm completely okay with this. This game is story heavy. It is historic heavy. This game is telling a actual historic depiction of the time of 1403, but get ready to watch long, like 5-minute cutscenes, the closest to Metal Gear Solid 4 you've gotten since Metal Gear Solid 4. They do look rather nice. The cutscenes actually do show off more of the better looks of this game. When the game kind of pulls out and lets you explore more, that is when you tend to get into the clipping problems and the graphical issues. The cutscenes do tend to look better, but just be ready. Again, there's going to be a lot of story, and there's going to be a lot of cutscenes in this game, and you're just going to have to deal with them. And the final thing that I want to warn you about, or again, it's like a tip, is be ready to not have your hand held. This game does not do that. It gives you immediately a quest that I think has 6 parts to it, and then from there, it gives you more parts. It gives you like 2 additional parts. The first quest has like 8 parts, and for the first easily hour plus of this game, you are left wondering, what am I supposed to be doing? The game does not tell you what to do. You have to figure it out yourself. You have to go around. It'll kind of help you. It'll tell you where the quests are. You got to go. It doesn't tell you exactly who to talk to. You kind of have to put a name with the objective, because the game won't tell you this is the person you must speak to. So it doesn't hold your hand that way, and it doesn't really hold your hand of which order to complete these quests in, which you'll notice that quests that have multiple parts don't necessarily go from parts A through, let's say C. It doesn't necessarily go A, B, C. It could go C, A, B. It goes in all sorts of different orders. There's different paths to completing these quests, and there's different orders, and the game is not going to tell you when. The game doesn't hold your hand with save systems either. The game puts you back massively when you die, which I actually personally do not like whatsoever. There are save systems in terms of sleeping and drinking alcohol, but you need to acquire the alcohol. You can find beds pretty oftenly around the neighborhoods that you're going to be visiting, so you would be able to save somewhat often, but when you die, the game sets you back big time. So overall, this is a game that I think has a lot of potential still. I have not played a ton of it yet. This is not, an expert tip and trick thing. It's just giving you guys some pointers when you're going into the game. These are things you need to be aware of. You need to be aware of the fighting. You need to be aware of the dialogue decisions. You need to be aware what kind of game this is. A talk-heavy, story-heavy, very glitchy, somewhat underdeveloped game that overall is trying to do a lot of different things. There's a lot of positive things in this game. There's more things in this game. Again, like if you pull out a sword and the crowd sees you, they're going to get the guards on you, so you don't want to pull out your sword in public because you'll scare people. You need to eat and sleep at regular times. You need to actually change your armor and change your sword because they get dull over time. There's a lot of things to this game, and you need to be ready to deal with those things. So those are my personal tips and tricks to you. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think of these. What tips and tricks would you give other people going into this game? What should people know heading into Kingdom Come Deliverance? Let me know. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Podcast Now. Like and share the video, and I will see you guys on the next video.